Here we're going to tie the Henry's Fork Salmonfly. First thing I'm going to do is just get some bright orange thread started here. We're just going to dress the hook, lay down a base coat of thread here, go all the way to the bend. Then I'm going to take some black coastal deer hair. I'm going to put it in a stacker. And I'm only going to use about 20 or so fibers. Got to be careful not to overdo it. You can also use moose hair for the tail as well. I'm going to tie in a tail. It's about a quarter to a half of the length of the shank of the hook. I don't want to go any more than a half. I'm just going to tie this in right on top of the shank. I'm just going to wrap my thread forward. And I can trim out all that excess, any straggly little fibers here that I have poking out. Just trim them all out of there. And you can just kind of clean things up a little more. I'm going to take my thread back. I'm going to pinch this tail nice and tight. I'm going to lay down just a few more wraps nice and tight, making sure I'm pinching that tail to keep all those fibers aligned. And we have our tail tied in. Now the next thing to do is tie in our hackle. And the size of the hackle doesn't really matter too much because the body of this fly is actually clipped. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a brown whiting Rooster hackle here from a cape. I'm just going to tie that in by the tip. And then I can trim out the excess there. And I'm going to take my thread all the way to the back once again. And we're going to dub the body. In the body, you can use a lot of different kinds of dubbing. You can use naturals or synthetics. I'm just going to use a rusty orange Hareline dubbing, just a basic dubbing here. But like I said, you can use lots of different kinds of dubbing. You can use superfine dubbings, poly dubbings. I like the more naturals for dry flies. They seem to float a little better, and are also a little easier to work with as well. And I'm just going to dub a nice even body here. Try not to taper it too much. It's pretty much just an even body all the way up to the thorax kind of region. I dub it fairly tight. I'll wrap the dubbing onto my thread very tight so I don't get too many straggly fibers sticking out. And it takes a couple of rounds dubbing here to coat the shank. And I'm going to go about 3/4 of the way up here. I got to be careful not to crowd that eye and go too much farther. There we go, that should do it. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this hackle and I'm just going to wrap it around my body here. Once I get up here to the thorax, I'm just going to capture it. Trim out the excess, and then believe it or not, I'm just going to kind of roughly stroke these fibers back before I clip them. Believe it or not, we're just going to take our scissors and just clip all the fibers. So I have about 1/4 of an inch of fibers here. It's kind of like stubble. This will help the fly sit a little more flush to the water, but still give it the appearance of having legs. This can also be done to taste. If you like a nice high riding fly, you can leave it a little bit longer with those fibers. Now what we're going to do is we're going to tie the wing. For the wing, we're going to use some natural elk hair. I'm going to take a clump. It's about half to 3/4 of the diameter of a pencil or so. Probably about 20-30 fibers. Put it in a hair stacker. Give it a stack. And I usually tie these a little more sparse than some other people do. Henry's fork is meant to be a little sparser. We're going to just measure out so that these fibers kind of touch the tail. I'm going to trim them. Now all it's left to do is just take them and tie them in. I'm just going to do a nice loose wrap with my thread, do a second one, and then just bite down and wrap through all those fibers. I should get some flare out of the hair there, just a little bit. It's good. I'm going to take my thread here. I'm going to leave a little bit of bare hook shank right up by the eye. Left a little bit of that there for a reason. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to take some black coastal deer hair once again. And this time I'm going to take a few more fibers than I used for the tail. I'm going to take about twice as many. Probably about 40 fibers or so. Give you a look here. About like that, maybe more than 40, maybe close to 50. We're going to take that and also put it in our hair stacker. Give it a stack here. Once I get those tips mostly even, sometimes this hair doesn't stack as well as I like it. Doesn't have to be necessarily perfect. Get it as close as you can. There we go. Now what we're going to do is we're going to trim these fibers. Ideally we want our fibers to stick back over the thorax about, I'd say about a ½ inch or so. So I just kind of roughly measure that out, and then I'm going to give myself another ¼ inch past that, because we're going to actually double the head over itself with this fly. I'll show you what I mean here in a second. And we're going to take these fibers and we're going to hold them so that the tips face forward, butt ends will face back. Give it another trim here. There we go. I'm going to do a nice loose wrap with my thread over these fibers. I'm going to do a second loose wrap. Then what I'm going to do is just bite down and let go these fibers and just roughly let them spin around the shank. And I want to make sure that I have it evenly covered. And I also want to make sure that I go all the way forward on the eye. If you can see here, I still have a little bit of room. I can do another couple wraps. So what I'll do is I'll just hold all this hair forward. Do another couple wraps forward a little more. I want to go all the way to the eye. Then I can wrap back and cover up all those butt ends. I'm going to take my thread all the way to the wing. Now I'm going to take either the end of a pen or you can use your fingers. I'm just going to kind of push these fibers. Oh, the eye is too big on this hook to do it. So I'll just take all these fibers, I'm just going to push them back. Do a nice loose wrap with my thread, then bite down. And those fibers a little longer than I probably wanted them to be. Could have shortened them up a little bit as far as how far they stick back over the hook, but that's okay. I would have liked them to be probably about a ½ inch shorter. And what I'm going to do is get in here and trim all the bottom fibers out. We want this fly to ride nice and flush to the water. So all those bottom fibers I clip. Now what we're going to do is just whip finish right over the top. That bright thread. There's always going to be a few short fibers up here, so you can just trim those out of there. Really, that's all there is to the Henry's Fork Salmonfly. Great little pattern on Henry's Fork in early summer, late spring. Salmon flies are popping. You can get all the materials for this fly at intheriffle.com.